But let's move into Chapter 7, which is dealing with social sexual behavior in the workplace.
So, to start with the definitions, the EEOC defines sexual harassment as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for favors, or other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when submission becomes a condition of employment. It is used as a basis for employment decisions or unreasonably interferes with someone's work or creates a hostile environment.
The European Union frames it a bit differently as conduct of a sexual nature or conduct based on sex that affects the dignity of workers, and and is categorically unacceptable. A survey of U.S. government employees found 19% of men and 44% of women reported experiencing harassing behavior within a 2-year period. And in 2008 alone, over 13,000 harassment complaints were filed with the EEOC.
And so employers carry a real responsibility here, which is taking active steps to prevent harassment, raising the subject openly, expressing clear disapproval, developing real sanctions, informing employees of their rights, and building ways to sensitize the whole organization.
The landmark case here is the Meritor Savings Bank versus Vinson, the first sexual harassment case the U.S. Supreme Court considered. It established the two legally actionable types of harassment under Title VII, quid pro quo harassment and hostile environment harassment.
And so, in terms of federal action, when cases go to court, plaintiffs are more likely to win when the harassment was more severe, when there were supporting witnesses or documents, when they'd already complained to management before filing, and when management failed to act on that complaint. The more these factors are present, the stronger the case is.
Harassment shows up in different forms with different severity levels. Verbal requests, verbal requests, which often constitute quid pro quo harassment, such as verbal comments, which typically create a hostile environment, and nonverbal displays, which can include sexual assault or unwelcome touching.
And to add, severity tends to increase when the harasser holds a higher position than the victim, when there's a pattern of similar behavior toward multiple people over time, and when there are real job consequences for the victim.
So explanations of harassment, there's 5 different models researchers use to explain why harassment happens. The evolutionary model treats sexual behavior as something to be accepted rather than a problem, a controversial framing to say the least. The sociocultural model argues harassment is really about power and dominance, not sexuality itself.
So, even further, the organizational model says that organizational characteristics set the stage. Greater power differentiates Greater power differentials mean more harassment. And so the gender roles spillover model says harassment happens when gender expectations bleed into work contexts where they're irrelevant. And it happens more common in skewed groups with tokens. And the individual differences model reminds us that even under identical conditions, not everyone engages in harassment. Individual variation matters the most and most importantly.
So experiences of sexual harassment, we're using the Me Too 2024 reports, and this slide shows current data comparing male and female experiences of harassment. So take a moment to look at the breakdown of reported incidents of sexual harassment between men and women.
And so now here we have a breakdown by industry specifically for women. And it's worth noting here that the cost of sexual harassment to the federal government alone runs roughly $320 to $350 million over a 2-year period. For individuals, costs show up physically within headaches, sleep disturbances, fatigue, mentally through lost self-esteem, anxiety, and depression, and professionally through reduced job satisfaction and organizational commitment.
That's right. And I want to just point out that a lot of incidents of sexual harassment by men tend to be underreported because a lot of men hesitate to report incidents of sexual harassment in their various workplaces. But go ahead and take a look at this continued industry breakdown and some of the cost figures that apply here.
So now let's shift to workplace romance, the causes. Sternberg's theory of love frames romantic relationships around 3 components: intimacy, passion, and decision making or commitment. And workplace romances tend to move through these 3 stages: interpersonal attraction, romantic attraction, and the decision to actually engage.
Interpersonal attraction is shaped by physical and functional proximity and by attitude similarity. Romantic attraction is shaped mostly by perceived physical attraction. Whether a romance develops at all depends on individual attitudes towards workplace romance, whether it fulfills job, ego, or love motives, plus sex differences, the nature of the job, organizational culture, and the sex ratio within the group.
And so within workplace romances, the dynamics, workplace romances tend to fall into four categories based on motive. A fling fulfills the ego motive for both partners, true love fulfills the motive for both, a mutual user relationship fulfills the job motive for both, and a utilitarian relationship fulfills the ego motive for one partner and the job motive for the other.
So, two key variables shape these dynamics: power, including the risk of exploitation in both hierarchical and lateral relationships, and dependency, whether task based, career based, or personal and sexual. Couples tend to be more secretive in less open organizational cultures, in hierarchical romances, or when one or both partners are married. When the romance ends, the rejected partner often experiences a drop in self image, and there's an elevated risk of the situation turning into sexual harassment at that point.
Well, and even further, consequences within workplace romances can go either way. Productivity might increase or decrease. Romances can lead to marriage with a new partner or a breakup with the current one, and they can affect job satisfaction and overall general happiness, sometimes at the cost of mentoring relationships suffering as well.
Yeah, there's a recent, very public example worth mentioning. The so-called Coldplay concert couple caught on camera together in the summer of 2025, which was an affair involving a company CEO and the head of HR. Both lost their positions within a week, and it's kind of a vivid and current illustration of just how quickly consequences can escalate, especially with a power imbalance involved, because the CEO and the head of HR, that head of HR, although the head of a division, which is a high ranking position, she reported to him. Big no no, as the head of HR would know. So we'll close the chapter with recommended actions. Adopt a zero tolerance policy on harassment. You want to train managers to recognize and respond to it and create a genuinely safe way for reporting for employees to bring those complaints forward in a safe and responsible way.
And even further, investigate every allegation and take real action. Offer counseling to support employees dealing with harassment or navigating a workplace romance, and never ignore harassment directed at you. Confront it directly or use a formal complaint process. Take organizational action when a workplace romance affects the actual conduct of work, and otherwise, let it be. And if you're considering a workplace romance yourself, weigh the potential cost against the benefits, honestly, before getting involved.
Well, no danger there. I am not considering a workplace romance. Although I did meet my husband at UCCS when I was an undergraduate in a history class. So, just a campus romance when I was very young in my 20s. So, but well, that doesn't count when you're a student, right? When you're an undergrad, that's where lots of undergrads meet their significant other, I think. College. College is a good place. But that wraps up chapter 6 and 7, everyone. Woohoo! We're getting close. All right, we are on to our last two, chapters 8 and 9. But we'll take a pause.